Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. One of the biggest perceived issues moving from Classic WoW to the Burning Crusade was the amount of currency that players had amassed throughout the duration of Classic, and it wasn't hard to see why these concerns had arisen when you saw the state of what was going on in gold bid runs where people were bidding near gold cap for one single item, which is a very expensive paperweight these days. Instances like Maradon, Zul'Farrak, ZG, Strat packed to the brim with a literal /who cap of bots every single day. It was clear a large portion of the player base were getting gold from illicit sources rather than doing it the old-fashioned way and grinding out the coppers in Diamol East. So along came BlizzCon, and the question regarding the gold cap was actually put forward to Blizzard, to which they essentially said, get good, or more specifically, we really felt like, even though there are some concerns, the things that allow people to get all this gold so quickly are knowledge, experience, and willingness to put in the time and effort, and we wouldn't want to take that away from anybody who has thought ahead. So there we go. The stance from Blizzard is you should be thinking ahead when it comes to the recreation of this game. Myself, I headed into TBC with about 12k or so raw gold, and I was ready to drop pretty much everything I had just to get the Spell Strike and Frozen Shadowweave items that I needed on my Warlock. I thought the prices of everything were going to be completely insane because we were just so incredibly over prepared, or so I thought. I intended to get the gear and then get epic flying at a later date, whilst going around on the struggle mount questing and trying to pick up enough pieces of gold to be able to afford the thing. In reality, I remember the first time I went to look at the auction house to check prices. This was at the end of the first week. I was expecting the price of Primal Mites to be easily over 500 gold, or at least 500 gold I should say, and it was at 280, only 280 in the first week, and I thought, that's well, that's a lot cheaper than I expected it to be, at least for the end of the first week. That's not too unreasonable. In fact, this just seems to be the case in general. The economy appears to have settled extremely quickly. You can see this worldwide. A similar trend has followed if we look over here at nexushub.co, which takes its information from the TSM auction house add-on. Primal Fires being somewhere between 25 to 30. Primal Air's not too far off that. Mites between 100 to 130 now, which is, again, seems really cheap to me. Spellcloth below 80, Shadow around 75, Primal Mooncloth around 55. These are very low prices for these things when the game is about a month and a half old at this point in time. Flasks are way cheaper than they ever were in Classic and also feel so much more accessible to get hold of, being generally between the 50 to around 80 gold mark depending on which one you're buying, because different materials and your server obviously. In fact, among the items which have gone up a lot, the main one I've noticed is the Living Ruby, which is needed for your various red gems, which appear to be in much higher demand than anticipated, despite the actual socketing bonuses being pretty good. They just keep going up, and I don't really see any trend stopping that anytime soon. The lack of gold cap going into TBC seems to have been more or less a non-issue at this point in time, and I think there's a couple of reasons behind that. TBC gold investments are extremely front-loaded. You get the big ones and then you have them forever and you never need to worry about it again. And I think gold does matter a little bit less than Classic. It's just much more accessible, so once you have the thing you need, you're done with it. Whereas in Classic, as each new phase came out and as each new raid came out, there was this constant ongoing need to stack every single consumable under the sun, which was severely crippling if your guild had any wipes at all, or even if they just went through the instances fairly cleanly. They just really set you back week in, week out. So this isn't the case in TBC. The nightmare of trying to farm Black Lotus for flasks is a thing of the past, as Fel Lotus drops from a variety of herbs, stopping market fixing for prices on flasks. Procs from the various masteries of alchemy have also put a lot more consumables in circulation as well. Professionals printing cooldown items are extremely widespread. I think this has been a big contributor to prices coming down very quickly, on top of having less than 1 day cooldown on transmutes for metagems and primal mites, which is something I forgot that happened in TBC until I started doing them myself. Then I realized it's not going to take me personally too long to get where I want to be on my characters in terms of primals. And setting up a professional, of course once you have the appropriate level for it, is very easy, and you can do a full cloth run throughout Outland on a level 60 with a 60% mount, absolutely no problem. I do it regularly. And then of course you've got the big one, flying. That's going to set you back about 6,000 gold as well, which is a pretty sizable amount even if you do have a lot of gold. You have your bags from Paris Hilton as another optional thing on top of that. You got your profession releveling or leveling. Of course, the items that come from vanilla have started to go up and up because less people are engaging with that content, so it sort of all feeds into itself. And making gold in TBC, in my opinion at least, is so much easier than it ever was in Classic. Now, don't get me wrong, competition is fierce in the open world for resources, but we have multiple different farming spots for all these different moats. For the herbs, apart from a few ones such as Terracone, which have been notably expensive, for ores, we have spawns inside of dungeons, and we have access to flying, which makes collecting these things so much quicker as well. And for the time being, layering is still a thing. I don't know if it's active on your server. It's reset weekly, and then it's just turned on again if needs be. I've had 2 layers so far the whole way through TBC though. Questing for gold is really good in TBC. Now, I know I'm a bit strange in how I play, and apparently I'm about one of 12 or so people that actually likes doing questing and fully clearing out zones of all them pesky yellow exclamation marks, but the amount of money you make from them combined with the numerous quest rewards is another very easy source of income. Enchanting materials are plentiful from DEing quest screens or blues that you can't use, and even if you just vendor them, you still aren't too far off usually the value that you would have got from DEing them. I've heard that gold buying is being far more actively punished as of TBC, and have been checking out the bot side of things since the boost was introduced, and whilst there was that initial insanity that we saw very early on, overall it does appear to be much improved. Not perfect, don't get me wrong, there's some spotty areas to clean up, but there does seem to be bans going out or botters just having to change their patterns a little bit more than we saw in Classic. At least we don't have a dungeon where you can slash shoe it and see it packed all times of the day every single day with pretty clear bots. It's a step in the right direction at least, I'll say that. Gold bid runs have yet to make a return in a meaningful way. No doubt they will at some point in time for Gruul and DST. You've got your items from Kara like Spike Blade, your Prince Bow like Justice, Lightning Capacitor from Magtheridon, the head, maybe. Perhaps once tier 5 is out, people will look into doing it more for earlier tiers. I can't help feel like people would already be doing it though if they were going to be doing it. Naxxramas had GDKPs going since week 2, or at least within the first month on larger servers. Maybe the format that made gold bid so successful in Classic just doesn't translate over as well to TBC with our 25-man raids, and many of those raid spots are taken by utility classes or ones to ensure that all of our buffs and debuffs are being covered. There's just a lot less class stacking going on. The most popular classes, we have 5 shamans, we have 4 hunters, we have 4 warlocks, or up to that many I should say, and there are abyss pieces that go between different classes as well. But then again, there's just so many less people to bid each other up, isn't there? Maybe instead you agree a price with the buyer before raid, and then if said item drops, they get it and they pay the fixed amount that is agreed upon. Sort of like how the saffron enchants worked in Classic, where you could sell them out of raid, but you would have to bring that person along to raid, which is at least a better system than your regular gold bids, in my opinion. Also, there's so much crafted base, things from badges. You just need less stuff from raids in general. Phase 2 will see how this demographic looks though. Despite totally valid concerns from the players though, things are working out, I would say, which is great to see. It looks like the gold sinks are sinking enough gold at the moment, and the updated profession system is doing its job. So it's at least one area of concern, which I think we can say thankfully is looking like it's going to be okay. Obviously this will be heavily server based, and how many goblins you have on the auction house trying to undercut each other at all times of the day or trying to buy out certain things and repost them. Also, there'll be the peak times when things just always go up, like your reset day or Sunday for instance. But generally, I think prices have been fine if you're buying and selling at fairly sensible times. So let me know how your server looks. Hopefully it's pretty sensible as well and okay. As always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. See you all in the next one very soon.